Okay. Okay, everyone, I'm going to go live in right now. Just letting everyone know so that if anyone's having a conversation, it doesn't accidentally show up on YouTube. Right, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this special series. Inshallah, we're going to start with our usual dua and then we'll get into it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise is due to God, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his noble family, companions, and followers. We intend to learn and to teach, to remind and be reminded, to benefit and be benefited, to improve and be improved, to encourage holding fast to the book of God and the way of his messenger, and to call unto guidance and to direct towards good, hoping for the countenance of God and his pleasure and his proximity and his reward. And peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his noble family and companions and followers. Ameen. So inshallah, today is going to be the first of a session of a 4-part series, and I hope we get through it all. We're going to be discussing 40 deeds of love and service. And why did I want to talk about this in particular? So recently I heard, and this is from the Hikam of Ibn Ata'illah, he said, "Man dallaka ala dunya faqad ghashak." The person who points you towards the world, they cheated you. وَمَنْ دَلَّكَ عَلَى الْعَمَلِ فَقَدْ أَتْبَعَكَ. Sorry, not فَقَدْ أَتَعَبَكَ. And the person who pointed you toward deeds, they made you tired, right? And then he says, وَمَنْ دَلَّكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَقَدْ نَصَحَكَ. And the person who pointed you or directed you towards God, then that's the one who actually gave you nasiha. That's the one who actually wanted and wished good for you. And then Imam Zayd has something that he adds to this, and he said, we can add to this, وَمَنْ دَلَّكَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ فَقَدْ أَهْلَكَكَ. And the person who directed you towards themselves, then they destroyed you. And so this, when we're looking at this idea of why am I discussing deeds, right? Because it says here, the person who points you towards deeds, well, they made you tired, right? If we keep talking about abundance of good deeds. And I understand it actually in a very different way. When I was younger, we had like youth group halaqas and we had checklists of good deed charts and things like that. And, there was this idea of just keep adding good deeds into your schedule, which is not wrong in and of itself. But what it felt like after a while was how many check marks can I give myself? And the deed became done for its own sake. You know what I mean? It was about the check mark, and it was about doing that. And the intention and the purpose of that deed is lost. So obviously, when people are even getting closer to God, that happens through deeds, right? Whether it's a dua, whether it's prayer, whatever it is, it happens through deeds. But it has to be about God. That's what makes it something that directs them towards God. And so, so even though we're going to be talking about deeds, we're not going to be talking about them for their own sake. We're going to be talking about them because they are a means of increasing in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The deeds as like, this is a small thing that I'm doing because I want to attain more of God's love in my life. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, and this is related to us by Sayyidah Aisha, the most beloved of actions to Allah are those that are regular, even if they are little, right? So again, the most beloved of deeds to Allah. If the deed is beloved to Allah and the person doing it is doing it for the love of Allah, right? And that's actually about God. The deed is an exchange, but the actual purpose is about God. And so each week, my intention is to try to cover 10 good deeds, but I specifically focused on deeds of love and service. And we can I'm not going to ask people about assignments and did you do it and what do you think and what are your reflections, because it's Ramadan and that's between, inshallah, everyone and the creator. And also we don't have the time, it's a 1-hour class. But it's pick from what you hear, maybe one thing this week, or 2 things or 3 things, whatever, or maybe there's something else, which is just by knowing about some of these deeds, because we don't actually hear about things that have a lot of reward. And there's this idea of wajib al-waqt. Wajib al-waqt is at any given time, there's like the thing you should be doing. There's a thing, the wajib is like the thing that's incumbent upon you. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's incumbent. It means like, this is the best thing to do in this moment, right? So you find yourself in Ramadan moments where you're by yourself, that has special deeds to do. And you have moments in Ramadan where you're with a lot of people at iftar time, or, at suhoor time in the morning, or with your family. And in those times, there are also deeds or special wajibat, right? There's special things that needs to be accomplished, or duties that can be done. And so this idea of learning about these deeds so that we're aware of them, we're present and we're conscious, and we can take advantage of opportunities that are around us all the time. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, لا تحقرن من المعروف شيئا ولو أن تلقى أخاك بوجه طلق. Never take any good deed as trivial, not even to meet your brother with a smiling face, right? Like, just even to smile in the face of someone, don't make light of that. Like, that's very valuable. And this hadith is related in Muslim. Now, what's interesting is, like, we're an ummah where the Prophet ﷺ was like always smiling, right? We know that. And he says smiling is a charity and like the reward of smiling in the face of your brother. But if you go into a lot of Muslims' faces, you don't really see people smiling. Like, we're very like serious. And especially, like, I've lived in the Muslim world in different parts, and it's like when you leave the house, you're supposed to, like, there's a sternness almost like so that people don't take advantage of you, and so there's like this like almost like a street wear which is on your face, which is like, I don't take nonsense from anyone, but it's a sad thing in some ways, because this idea of smiling in the face of your brother, just looking into the face of your fellow Muslim with a smiling face is full of reward. So in Ramadan, I wanted to focus on acts of love and service to the creation of Allah, but something that's really born out of love of Allah. And this is something our scholars have they repeat this all the time. The way of love and service was the way of the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, this was, they were known for this, and this was something that, like, for generations, you would almost know, wow, this is this person from the family of the Prophet, because like they're so good at love and service, because it was just something they carried. And we want, when you think about beautiful character and how, like, fasting helps us to draw closer to God, but it's something that refines our character. You can almost put any beautiful act of character into a category of either an expression of love or an expression of service. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he says that the one who is better than you in character is actually better than you in religion. So it's not the person who memorized the most. It's not the person who studied the most. It's not the person who's teaching the most. It's actually the person who's more beautiful than you in character. They're actually the person who's better than you in religion itself. And we know that Prophet Muhammad had the most exalted character. So in terms of, again, what we hope from this class is that we want the fruit of knowledge, right? And the fruit of worship in Ramadan to be manifested, at least when we're with the creation of God, through acts of love and service. And if you think about just love and service, just those two really important intentions and values, the presence of these things changes the world. It makes it a beautiful place. It makes it wonderful. Like Islamic civilization, when we talk about it didn't spread by the sword, it spread by Muslims who were so hospitable and they were so kind, and the traders and all of this, and the way they interacted with the community. What were they doing, right? It was love and service. And similarly, the absence of love and service really destroys the world, right? The absence of these qualities, selfishness and greed and only caring about yourself, and hatred and disdain and malice, these are things that destroy the world. So, I mean, when you think about faith itself, I would say like 90% of my office hours are about people who've had such terrible experiences on the hands of other Muslims that it has caused them to have a test in faith, right? Like they question the religion, not because there's anything in the religion that was wrong, but because Muslims did things to them that were wrong, and then they tried to justify it using religion. So on the other hand, there are people who, because of the way of how they deal with others, it actually renews people's faith in humanity. It renews people's faith in Islam. It invites people to faith, right? People will say, like, I met someone, the person was I just went to Chicago and I found out about it, like a brother who became Muslim in someone's car, and they just happen to be coworkers at a hospital. They happen to have the same shift that night. The brother that is the person whose car it is like in charge of dawah programs, just so happens to be in charge of dawah programs in his institution, and the person needed a ride, and it was just like simple acts that made that other brother like just feel more comfortable with him and feel comfortable to ask and pick up some beads and be like, well, what are these? And, and that conversation, within a matter of weeks, the person had taken the shahada. So like, just as the absence of love and service can destroy faith, like the presence of it can invite even people to faith. The deeds that we're going to talk about, we're going to attempt, inshallah, because I know our time is what it is. And I'm going to be using actually a text I want everyone to see. This book is called Easy Good Deeds. It's a very nice little book, and it's from Mufti Muhammad Taqi Uthmani, and he's a famous scholar. I believe he's a Nadwatul Ulama, but the text is like, it's usually based on one hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you could do 40 narrations of love and service, but the book actually has more than that. It has a lot more good deeds and a lot more good deeds associated with worship. So I only collected the ones that dealt with the concept of love and service, and those are the ones we're going to focus on. We're not going to cover the whole book. So inshallah today, if anyone wants to buy it, just so if they wanted to follow along, I think it's on Amazon. For today, we hope to cover good intentions, dua, seeking forgiveness, to initiate the greeting of Salaam, visiting the sick, participation in funeral or janazah, salah, and burial, consoling the bereaved, love for the sake of Allah, helping a Muslim, and interceding in permissible matters, like helping people out in permissible matters. So those are the 10 we're going to attempt, inshallah. I see there might be a question. Yes, thank you for putting that in the chat box. The book is available. And the very first one, subhanAllah, the first one is the foundation of all the other ones. It always starts with the intention. So before we can even talk about deeds of love and service, there has to be an intention of love and service, right? The deed is not worship without it. And I love what he says in the first sentence. He says, intention is the alchemical formula that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the believer, and which can, with a little effort, turn even dust into gold. What he means is like the smallest thing can become really weighty and valuable because of the intention behind it. And we all know the famous hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Innamal a'malu binniyat," actions are based upon intentions. He says that any good deed will only earn reward if performed with the right intention, right? So this is in general, but as it relates to deeds of love and service, it's not just to do them because it's a ritual or it's a cultural element, even though alhamdulillah it's good for all of these things to become part of a culture, but really to intend, I want to serve my brother, I want to this is coming from a place of love, or it's to serve my sister. And he says permissible deeds do not inherently earn a person reward or punishment. However, if they are done with good intention, they become acts of worship and earn reward. So the other day when I was talking about what are we as the Majlis, we're like an intentional community, because when all of our spaces were taken away, we were still coming together, alhamdulillah. One of the intentions to learn, but also to develop these qualities and to practice them together. The idea of being an intentional community is significant because it kind of distinguishes between sort of like coming together and wasting time with friends, like, because you can do that and it's permissible in the sense of you're just sitting with people for whatever reason. But if you come without intention, what tends to happen? Conversation deteriorates. Things get spoken about that shouldn't get spoken about. People get made fun of that shouldn't be made fun of, right? Like even the interaction loses the softness or the welcome because the intention's not there. But when there is that intention, you don't have to come to a special place called the Majlis to have that intentional community experience. You can, for every visit, for every interaction, that's something that is between the heart and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with our family members, with our kids. And you can see, subhanAllah, how just turning on that switch transforms the interaction always, without exception. And it could be something so intangible, so incredibly intangible, and you see the intention manifest. So intentions are powerful. Like what you want in your heart, and that's something that you intend with Allah, it's a very powerful thing. He says, there's no permissible action, obviously, in life that cannot be transformed into an act of worship. And then he starts to list some things, and some of these things we know, but I thought it was interesting that, he starts with this and he didn't talk about ritual worship. As soon as he started mentioning intention, he actually went into deeds between human beings, deeds of human beings in the world, interacting with the world. So something as simple as earning a livelihood, right? A person, whatever trade they have, whatever work they're doing, and with the intention of rightfully fulfilling the duties, right, towards one's family. If a person, for example, the husband is the breadwinner and he is serving his family in that way, or if a person intends to earn that wealth and then to be able to have enough to spend so that they can help the poor. I know a family that were refugees years ago, and when they came to this country, they actually made the intention for all of them. They're like, we're all going to become rich. And they came to America. They said, we're all going to become rich, and we're all going to donate to those who couldn't come. We're all going to build institutions, donate, and they did. Like that intention, they all became rich, subhanAllah, by the blessing of Allah. All the kids, they all did well, and then they created institutions to go and help those who were impoverished from the country that they came from. And so, subhanAllah, that is worship. When a person is studying and they intend to serve humanity through that knowledge, it doesn't have to be just the study of religion. It can be a medical student who is intending, I'm going to serve those who are ill, versus this particular position makes more money than that one, right? And everyone knows, like when you visit a doctor and there's terrible bedside manner, you're like, why'd you become a doctor, right? Versus when you go and you're treated like a human being and you're like, okay, so this person actually wanted to take care of people. And so we experience that ourselves. To be, if someone's an engineering student, that I intention to serve their people, any other skill there is, but like, how am I going to harness this to help people and to serve people? He says that a person, even when they choose a particular profession, to think about how they're going to serve creation with that profession. Like that's an important part of the choice itself. And in this manner, he says the profession itself will become a means of reward. He says also, he gives an example. He says when doctors have this intention, for example, to serve those who are in need of help, what happens because they're a person with this intention is they will often treat people who are impoverished and who don't have the means to help either for free or at a discounted rate. It shows up in how they serve. I remember, I believe it was Sheikh Hamza who said, we have so many Muslim doctors. If all the Muslim doctors just donated 1 day a week to serve and treat people who didn't have insurance, this was before like Obamacare and all of that. And like, that would be the biggest, invitation in this country versus handing out pamphlets about what is Islam. Interestingly, these are some other things. I'm just going to mention them quickly. Wearing nice clothes, right? Wearing good clothes. He says the intention should be to please those that see them. So doesn't mean obviously like not showy clothes to show off, but the idea of being presentable and being presentable so that like, because in being presentable, there's a how do I put it? There's a goodness that you're giving to someone else, right? How many times have sisters seen each other and they're just like, wow, you look so nice. We get happy, right? When someone looks presentable versus being in PJs or, being in really, really just not the type of clothing that you should be wearing in a particular occasion. And another one that he mentions is to outwardly show love for children. And this is something that, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man la yarham saghirana," right? The person who doesn't have mercy on the young among us, they're not from us. And scholars commented and said, it's from beautiful manners to play with the children of your friends and to actually like, outwardly show that love and concern for them. So, and so something like, loving on kids. And you can tell, subhanAllah, when someone is like playing with a kid because they're trying to make the kid happy, there's a way that they play with them. When someone is playing with a kid because they're trying to amuse themselves, there's a completely different way they play with them, right? And sometimes different cultures, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? So, they're not toys, they're people too, little people. He also mentions the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would help out around the home, and he was described by his own families that when he was home, he was always in the service of his family. When he was home, he was always in the service of his family. And like I don't know what the sitcoms are today. I really don't. But I'm thinking about something Imam Zaid said at the banquet about like The Simpsons, right? And the depiction of the American father is just like on the couch, remote in hand, just not doing anything. Kids are going crazy. At most, you might yell at one of them. That's like his version of being at home, right? And really the depiction of the American father has been destroyed. Like he's always the comic relief. He's always the one who doesn't know what to do. He needs his wife to show him what to do. You know what I mean? Like he just, the idea of like of a healthy, strong masculinity is just, you can't find it in the media. You actually can't find it anymore. They're always the, and what that kind of at some level people might say, okay, well, it's funny because some of these things are true, but what it does culturally is it makes it so that the standards become a lot lower for everyone. Like no one even expects these like chivalry anymore. No one even expects or thinks that that's like a normal thing. When we say the Prophet ﷺ served his family, I've been to invitations, and it's like I've been to different invitations. So I've been to invitations with friends, alhamdulillah, where the dads are all involved and they're like watching the kids and maybe the mom is helping to get the food ready and stuff, but dads are playing with the kids and actively watching the kids, right? So it's not like you don't see a mother buried beneath all the kids and the cooking at the same time. And I've been to invitations where the women are doing like everything, right? And like the kids and the cooking and the cleaning and all that stuff in one side, and it's complete mayhem in one, and the men are sitting there having their tea quietly without interruption, and the fathers. And I look at that and I'm like, that's, I understand different cultures are different, but the idea of like, I can't imagine the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ entering that space and thinking like, this is like the way it should be. I just can't imagine him doing that. I imagine like our scholars, when they visit, what do you see them do? They literally pull the kids out of the crowd and play with them. You know what I mean? They give them attention. They show them that love. So this is something I really want to emphasize because like the neglect of children in community spaces is hard to watch. It's hard to watch. Alhamdulillah. May Allah make us all better with our own kids, inshallah. One should speak cheerfully, he says, with their wife and kids, because this was also the practice of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. So not being always, as you said before, not being abus. So-and-so's in a bad mood, don't talk to them. So-and-so's always in a bad mood, don't talk to them. Then when does a person actually like show the best of who they are to their family? Also hospitality, he mentions, and honoring guests is from the Prophet ﷺ, described as from the rights of a believer. If someone wants to plant a sapling or a tree in a garden or home, they should make the intention to benefit people or animals or to please onlookers. Like even something that you're planting, it could be a flower, it could be whatever it is that you're putting out, like doing that with an intention has an effect. Something interesting he mentions was, this was probably written a long time ago, was to make one's handwriting legible and pleasant so that people find it easy to read. And so with a time when people actually wrote letters to each other. It also talks about husband and wives, like being presentable at home, like just not like some people, they only look nice if they're outside the house, right? But if they're at home, they look, I think, who was it? I'm not going to say the name of the speaker, but they were like sitting on the couch looking like Shrek. Sitting on the couch looking like Shrek. But when they go out, they look really nice. They're like, no, be in your own home. Husbands and wives should look nice for one another. And in that intention, there's love and there's service. He mentions having recreation, permissible recreation within the limits, and to remain active and energetic. So you can play basketball because it's fun, right? But people can also meet up and play basketball as a way to get the sort of release that they need, so that when they have to go back to work or go back to whatever their families, they have more energy and more capacity to give and to be of service. So self-care itself, the time you take for yourself just to refuel, that enjoyment, whatever it is, honestly, it could be like a bowl of ice cream, but you're like, I'm taking this break right now so that I can get back into it and love and serve my family. That can be an act of worship. And he also encourages people to wear watches, because then you not only respect time and prayer times, but you respect other people's time, right? Like appointments and things like that. So again, intention is like the foundation for all the other deeds. No matter what deed we talk about after this, intention's it starts with that. Something as simple as, we're going to come to it in some detail later, but something as simple as speech. Like, what is the intention of the conversation? What is the intention of what I'm saying? What is the intent? Is it for the benefit of the listener, or is it for the benefit of myself? Right? Is it self-serving? Is it egotistical? Is it, is it to cover my own insecurities in some way, to show off? Or is it to help someone, to uplift someone, to give someone some hope who might be down, right? Those are things that we can think about before we say something. Yeah, so I was in a class the other day, I won't say where, and it was like there's students, there's a teacher, and there's a lot of classroom participation, because there's like a grade for classroom participation. But like everyone in the class was talking. The teacher didn't get a chance to teach the subject matter, but I felt like the teacher was trying to teach by example, a particular lesson. And like everyone who raised their hand, I think what it felt like is the students are trying to prove, like, we did the reading, we know. We did the reading, and so we know the material. But it came off like they're teaching the teacher. And one thing I remember asking was like, does anyone actually have a question? Like, does anyone in this class, we covered all these books, anyone actually have a genuine question about the reading? Or does everyone here, like, already, they're scholars in the subject? And so the teacher actually let the students just like take the class, essentially, like let it all out, and then he just looked at them, he was like, okay, let's take a break. Then go back. But alhamdulillah, it's one of those things where I noticed it in others, but there's a saying that if you notice something in others, then you have some of that in yourself as well, right? So like looking at that in others is not a reason to be like judgmental, oh, look at what they did, but it's more like, okay, if I see that, then I can acknowledge and recognize what that is, then where is that within me, right? Where have I hid that in my own self, from myself? And wow, that was just the first one, and we're supposed to get through 9 more. Okay, I think we're gonna go, that one was a little bit longer. The second one is dua and supplication. Now we know, alhamdulillah, this is like a month where we probably make more dua in this month than any other time of year. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلِيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. The interesting thing is that, if my servant asks you about me, then truly I am near. And I answer the call of everyone who calls upon me. So let them call upon me and let them believe in me so that they may be guided. And this, I thought it was interesting that it ended with so that they may be guided, right? I was thinking like this, so that they may be answered, so that they may have what it is they want, but so that like dua is something that provides guidance for us. One of the things I noticed from a teacher was anytime there was a difficult situation, and sometimes I would complain to the teacher about like a circumstance I find myself in, and like everyone's anonymous. I tell him like I'm having this problem with so-and-so. His first response to any interpersonal conflict situation that I would raise with him would be to make dua for that person, right? That was like the automatic response was dua for, not dua against, which is something maybe there's all sorts of things people, moms say with shib in the Muslim world for their, unfortunately, they shouldn't say these things towards their kids, but I'm not even gonna repeat them. And they say it's okay, it's colloquial, it's just a saying, they don't mean it, but like, don't let that be the culture, we can make dua for. And so, but like usually when we think of dua, we think of asking God for the things I want for myself, the things in my life that I'm working on. But dua as a form of love and service, dua in the time that you're upset with someone, and so you make dua for them instead. Dua at a time when maybe you're not upset with someone, maybe you're really happy with them, but like, in that moment of gratitude, you spend some time making a lot of dua for them. And what a beautiful act of love. Now, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the rest of us, we know that if someone were to keep asking you for something, someone like, you get annoyed when kids are like, can I have this? And then this, and then this, and then this again. Okay, thanks, I liked it, but I wanted this other toy over there. Like you get annoyed, too many asks. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the exact opposite. The more we ask, the more he's pleased with us, to the extent that there's actually a narration about those who don't ask him at all, how they earn his anger. Right? Because no one is outside of needing God. And then so for us to appeal to God for the needs of others, right? So appeal to him, whether it's, I mentioned a couple of circumstances, a person, you can make dua for someone that you're upset with. You can make dua for someone that you're really happy with. You can make dua for people that they're going through a really difficult time, and their circumstance is difficult, and you sense something, maybe they didn't even tell you what it was, but you're just like, I just feel like that person's going through something. And so you make dua for them. And so there's a hadith that states that whoever wants their dua to be answered during difficult times, right, they should make abundant dua during the comfortable times. Again, we usually apply this for ourselves, but this applies to others as well. You can make dua for people when they're going through something hard, but you can also just make dua for them in general. Like the Prophet ﷺ, who said that you don't truly believe until you love for your brother or your sister what you love for yourself. Well, how do you know if you love that for them? How do you know if you really love that for them? If it shows up in your dua, then at least that you can claim a form of love for them, because you are making dua for those things for them. And we know that whenever a Muslim makes dua for a fellow Muslim, an angel makes dua that person also receives the same. So again, it's a win-win situation. But think again, it starts with intention. And I believe it was Umar radiallahu anhu who said that if he ever thought about someone randomly, like that he wasn't thinking about before, if that person came and entered his mind, he would just make dua for them because he felt like maybe that was ilham, maybe that was an angel inspiring him to think of someone at that time and to just make dua for them. And a lot of times, maybe some of you guys have experienced this with close friends where you don't see them and you don't even know what's going on with them, but you just start like thinking about them, like, I wonder how so-and-so is doing. I wonder how so-and-so is doing. I feel like she's going through something. I don't know. And it's not waswas. Like you really feel like something's happening. And so they're kind of like in your heart. And then you check up on them and you see like, actually, yeah, they actually were going through something. And so if that happens to where you're kind of like randomly sitting and just, you could be in salah and you're like, wait, this is disturbing my khushu'. I just thought of so-and-so while I was praying. Okay, so in sajda, make dua for them. If it could be a close family member, it could be someone that you haven't thought about for years, and all of a sudden that's the person that comes to your mind, and you make dua for them. Often, literally, I mean, I've heard so many stories of someone just thinking about someone else and deciding to make dua for them, and then realizing the person was actually in labor, in another state. It's like at that moment, at that hour, at that day. And so like there's realities to these things. I was with a teacher once, and a truck passed by, and it had, those trucks that you guys see in Southern California say Matson, Matson. And the teacher just started making dua for Dr. Ingrid Matson. And and there was just like the truck passed by, they started doing it. And subhanAllah, later on I found out actually that her daughter had passed away, and she was grieving that, and that was actually a really difficult time for her. But like the teacher didn't talk about any of that stuff. They just saw the name and they took it as like, this is a reminder from God. And they spent time to make dua for her. Alhamdulillah, we covered that one faster than the previous one. The next one is seeking forgiveness. This is also very similar to the previous one. Yes, we seek forgiveness for our own mistakes and shortcomings and sins, but we can also ask that Allah forgives others, and especially those that we may be upset with or angry with in whatever. Like, it doesn't even have to be a fight. It could be like you feel slighted, I didn't like the way they looked at me or talked to me, or what did that mean? And interestingly, if you ask and you make dua for that person's forgiveness, not just for that sin or that deed itself, but just in general, that Allah forgives them and that they're a forgiven soul, that not only cleanses your own heart, but it and an angel is making now dua for your forgiveness. But there's something in that is going to be a cause for the reconciliation of hearts. So when you see them again, that thing won't be there anymore. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, and we know obviously he's a sinless human being. He said, I seek Allah's forgiveness and repent to him more than 70 times a day. On one hand, there's an example that the rest of us are set, but on the other hand, there's also like something that scholars call khilaf al-awla, right? And this shows like the subtlety of how considerate they were as people. Like they really were, they would notice these things about themselves, not necessarily about others, but themselves. Khilaf al-awla is, I didn't do something like prohibited, but I had two choices, and I chose the thing that's less preferable. Like there's something I could have done that was better to do during that time, right? So scholars say, like, don't just seek forgiveness for the sin, but if you can get to the level where you can be like, I wish I would have done this instead of this. It's not like I did something haram, but if I would have just done this other thing, it would have been better for everyone. You can actually seek Allah's forgiveness for that. And that's again, like I mean, unfortunately, when we talk about praying for God's forgiveness, at least from what I hear in office hours, many times in the community, this comes with like a sense of irredeemable shame. And even to ask is like an evidence that like you're so messed up, that's how it's been unfortunately framed for a lot of people. And it couldn't be further from the truth, right? If the prophet, who's the prophet, is asking God's forgiveness 70 times a day, then asking forgiveness is not an act of shame, right? It's an act of humility, but it's not an act of shame, right? It's not an act. Does the Prophet ﷺ have anything at all in his life to be ashamed of? No, it's an act of humility. There's these things have been like, we have to put them back kind of in the right place, because really beautiful symbols of Islam, when they're pushed in a different place, can actually really negatively affect self-esteem, and negative self-esteem really negatively affects spiritual growth and development. You can teach your kids humility. That doesn't mean break them, right? Sometimes that's an understanding that's taught, is like the way that kids are going to get taught to know their place is they get broken. That's wrong. And you never see that in the example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. They're taught humility, right? And humility is also in the example of the parent themselves. The great scholars, they don't come to destroy people or lower people. They actually come to restore people's dignity, to make people realize how dignified they are as human beings, to make people like realize how much self-esteem they have just as being creations of God. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, whoever adheres to seeking forgiveness, Allah makes for him or her an exit from every constriction, a relief from every worry, and grants them sustenance from where they do not imagine. So it's like a habit. It's not just like it's a regular part of our life. The book Heart's Turn talks about this, about like, we don't just turn to God one time. We're constantly, living our lives and turning back to him, and evaluating and living our lives and turning back to him. And the idea is not, again, to put people down in any way, but the idea is just this, that actually it's very aspirational, which is, I hope and I believe I can do better. I hope and I believe I can do better. I can do better. And that's not something to put people down. It's something to raise them up. Before we go to sleep, he says, we should contemplate our own shortcomings committed throughout the day before going to sleep. And whatever those shortcomings are, we should ask Allah's forgiveness at that time. Often our shortcomings, so on the first hand, I said to pray for the forgiveness of others, that you may have something in your heart towards them. The second thing is, when you're contemplating yourself, look at the things how you dealt with others. And maybe you did something, maybe I did something that was not nice or not polite or bad to someone else. And I have to hold myself accountable, and I have to seek Allah's forgiveness for that. Right? So I also have to go back and ask Allah's forgiveness. And for that to really be come together, I also need to seek their forgiveness. Right? It's not just like, oh, Allah, forgive me for, mistreating my little brother. That's not enough. It's like you have to go to your little brother and say, I'm sorry, I wasn't nice to you. But we, this idea of turning to Allah first in that. Okay, and now we're going to initiate the greetings of Salaam. Maybe we should make it, instead of 40 deeds of love and service, 10 deeds of love and service. I don't know if we're going to get through both. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, the closest person to Allah is one who greets them, the people, with salam first. And I never thought much about this hadith. I really never did. Like, okay, so you see people, they're going to say it first, you're going to say it first. It doesn't really matter who says it first. When you see people, you say hi. And I don't actually keep track of who says it or who doesn't say it. And I was in a really large, are they okay? Oh. Okay. He's okay. Okay, I'm done. So I was like in a large gathering, and it was kind of like a who's who type thing. Like a lot of people were there, a lot of important people were there. Everyone's important, but like at some point, like there were crowds of people sort of standing in groups, and I was oblivious to, I tend to be oblivious to a lot of things, but I was oblivious until later on. One of the brothers was saying something about like, isn't it so awkward when these gatherings happen? And I said, why? And they said, because everyone's like waiting to see who's going to go and say salam to them and acknowledge that they're there. And I was like, no, like, I don't know about women. Women don't really do that. Women are like, oh, it's been so long. Like the women don't, from what I can tell. Maybe I'm oblivious, but I don't think women do that for the most part. But he was, and I asked him more about it. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, because everybody knows each other, but they're waiting for someone else to come and be like, acknowledge, oh, I haven't seen you. Like they have to come to them. And I'm like, I just didn't know that was a thing. but I think like maybe genders are different in this regard. Maybe men, I'm asking the men, is that a thing amongst men? If men are together, like who's coming up to the other one first to be like, it's nice to see you? Is it a thing? I'm seeing a lot of nods. Okay.
Is it really? Like superficial relationships then?
Uh-huh.
I don't know, people that you know.
No, like, I mean, it could, like, think about it. Let's say like you're in a, I don't know, think about a secular setting. Don't even think maybe Muslims. Like if it was men in a non-Muslim setting, let's say it's like your coworkers or something like that. Does it matter who comes first? Because I'm just thinking about like, what does the nafs al-amara say? Like, does the nafs al-amara say, don't say hi, wait till someone says hi to you? Or does it, well, I can understand it cognitively, but I've never seen it, alhamdulillah. Like that gathering I thought I just noticed like people aren't talking to each other, but I didn't think anything of it. But that was what someone commented on, was that like they're waiting to see who's gonna publicly acknowledge the other person's presence.
Like a award ceremony or something like that.
Right.
They
Okay.
go, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah, that's alhamdulillah that we don't have these things, alhamdulillah. The Prophet ﷺ was asked again which actions are best for a Muslim, and he mentioned a number of different actions, and he also said to greet with salam those whom you know and those whom you do not know. And I thought that was really profound because Madiha, what your testimony was about the Majlis, in terms of coming in and people just automatically were like, you're new here, we don't know you, salam, and how like that had meaning for you. Interestingly, to give salam, to be the first to give salam is sunnah, but to respond to the salam is actually wajib, is an obligation. And I remember once I was working as a secretary in a masjid, and it happened once where a lady comes in to that particular masjid, and she was like, what's wrong with your community? Like, she was like, I'm a visitor from this other state. I've said salam to this many people on the way to the masjid, like on the sidewalk, and not a single person responded to me. And so I was like, I don't know. Like, but that's an interesting thing, because the responding is wajib. And subhanAllah, like how there's even instruction about these things. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, when you give salam, that it should be audible enough for the person to hear you, right? So we're working on this with like my son. He's a little bit more shy, so he says hi. He actually says, but you can't hear him because he's saying it so quietly. So we're like, it's okay to be shy. You're allowed to be shy, but when you say hi, that's when you should be loud, so that the other person actually knows when you say salam that like, you know, that you're talking to them. The Prophet ﷺ, he said to his special attendant, Sayyidina Anas, oh my son, when you go to your family, say salam. It will be a blessing for you and your family. Even upon entering an empty house, one should say salam with the intention of greeting the angels. Abdullah bin Umar, he used to say, Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadullahi salihin, right? When he would enter his home. SubhanAllah. So salam should be said clearly, so it's clearly understood. That's narrated in Bukhari. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, there's a story about a companion who comes to the Prophet and he says, Salaam alaikum. And then the person sits down, and then the Prophet ﷺ says 10. Then another person comes in and the person says, Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullah. And the person sits down after the Prophet ﷺ, returns the salam, and then he says 20. And then another person comes in and says, Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And the Prophet ﷺ responded. And then when the man sat down, he said 30, meaning the longer the salam, even, the more reward there is in that. And this is related in Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi.
Something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Someone gives a full salam.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, technically that's the full salam. You would add in return and your family.
MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And your family. Then he got even more. Alhamdulillah. So he also mentions here that if there's a fear that someone's work is going to be disturbed by a person who's like greeting them, right? So let's say that someone's in the concentrating and doing something very particular. Maybe they're doing construction, and if you're to say salam, it would like surprise them or shock them, things like that, you don't interrupt them. Also, if a person goes into like musalla and they see that someone is sitting down reciting Quran, or they're making dhikr, or someone who's like engaged in something that's already an action that's praiseworthy and good, that, you know, this, the example of that was like nursing the sick or even studying. You should delay the salam until the person has finished or is taking a break, because then your salam is an interruption to something that you know, is happening. I have a note here, and oh yes, this happened at a gathering. So like I was at an event many years ago when events would, like, you know, would happen, and there were parents of a son who they were really grieving the loss of their son. Everyone knew that they had recently lost their son, but they had to like speak about it in a particular capacity. And then later on, I was talking, I think, to the mother, and she was she was talking and she was like crying, you know, but it was like a very mellow conversation, and she was just I think releasing a little bit. And I still remember this, like a sister comes in and she's well-intentioned and everything, and she just like sort of interrupts the conversation, goes, "Salaam alaikum, I just want to say I loved your whole talk," like to the grieving mother, right? And it's like this lady's like, you can tell she's grieving, like, you know, releasing at this a difficult thing, and she's beginning to talk about it, and the other person who came means well, right? She wants to say hi to her, but like that's an indication that your salam is more about you than it is really about like giving peace to the person that you're talking to, or spreading peace to the person that you're talking to. If someone is, apparently, I didn't actually realize this until I read this part of the book, that if we're like in a setting like this, someone's teaching and there's people listening, it's the person walking in shouldn't say salam to everybody, like hey, like, and you know, and then there's another one. There's I think it's. Okay, if you're passing by a gathering and the gathering is, says somebody passes by or intends to join a gathering, if the gathering is already engaged in a conversation, they would say salam once to everyone rather than to break up the conversation and saying like individual salams to every single person in that conversation. So because then you kind of like broke up what they were doing, rather than saying salam and sort of like joining, you broke up the whole thing. So I think this is interesting because some of this may be culturally relative. I know like in Afghan culture, if you don't individually say salam to like everyone, and they will break what they're doing. They will break, if they're having tea or dinner or whatever it is, like they will break and you need to say the individual salam. And if you didn't say the individual salam, like you're in trouble afterwards. Like it'll be mentioned that they didn't even say hi to me. I was there, they didn't say hi to me. So I think some of this is also, you know, there's some cultural elements here that, you know, to take into account. We have 9 minutes, and we have visiting the sick is a really good one. So I don't want to end before we do this one. So there's a book that actually describes this called You Just Don't Understand. It talks about how men relate in the world through hierarchy while women are conditioned to relate through connection. That makes a lot of sense, that there are differences in how we say hi. Oh, subhanAllah. Thank you, Shireen. Jazakallah khair. So in terms of visiting the sick, some of the jurists, they believe that visiting the sick was something that is wajib, but he says the more correct opinion is that it's sunnah. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, when a Muslim visits his sick Muslim brother, he remains in the garden of paradise. This is related to Muslim. So visiting the sick is another garden from the gardens of paradise in this world. Ali radiallahu anhu also related that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, no Muslim visits an ill Muslim in the morning except that 70,000 angels pray for him until evening. And if he goes to visit him in the evening, 70,000 angels pray for them until the morning. And he is granted a garden in paradise. And this is related in Tirmidhi. Now I was visiting, it was interesting. You guys all know my sister-in-law, Aisha Siba, right? Like she's an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine, alhamdulillah. And her father just recently passed away. And he was in a nursing home, and he had a condition I literally have never heard of any other human being on this earth who had the condition that he had. Essentially he was paralyzed for 20 years, but he could feel everything, but he couldn't move anything voluntarily. So usually paralysis is something where they can't move it, but they can't feel it either. So there's an ease in that, right? This is where you can still feel everything, but you just can't voluntarily move it. And so for 20 years, right, he was in a nursing home, and obviously his family is visiting all the time. And I remember when I first visited him, he was someone that the only way he could communicate was with his eyes, Allah yarhamu. So if he looked up, that meant yes. And if he looked down or sort of to the side, that meant no. And I remember the first time I visited, like in the beginning, the visit was nice, and in the sense that like, I was so happy to finally meet him and see him, and I had heard really wonderful things about him, so I was just happy to be there. But then an interesting thing happened where a part of me felt like I'm doing a good deed. You know, you're doing something good, you're like, you start to see like I'm doing something good. Like I'm astaghfirullah, like I'm doing him a favor, not a favor, like he owes me anything, but like I'm doing something good for him, right? And with like, this is totally, there's no conversation because he can't move anything, he can only move his eyes. I felt his demeanor change. As soon as I felt that in my heart, I felt his demeanor change. And I went, it was prayer time, I had to go make wudu and stuff. And later on I thought about it, and I was like when I visit him, because I remember the hadith, like if the O servant of Allah, I was sick and you didn't visit me, right? And then it was like, and they're like, how could you be sick? It's like, no, my servant so-and-so was sick, and had you visited them, you would have found me with him, right? So I remember that, and I was like, no, I'm not doing anything nice for him. I'm really not. He's doing something nice for me. So like me visiting him is actually, he's doing so much more for me than I could ever be doing for him. So I came back and I kind of told him that. I was like, first I came and I kind of was thinking this, but then I realized that actually when I'm here and visiting you, you're doing so much more for me than I could ever do for you. And he looked up. So I was like, yes, lesson taken, subhanAllah. There's a lot of beautiful stories from a person who could only move his eyes up and down to learn about. May Allah increase his rank, and may we be gathered with him, inshallah, in the next world. And so visiting the sick, yes, it's an act of love and service, but just know that your visit to them actually benefits you way more than, so don't think I'm doing something nice, I'm helping them. No, they're helping you. Like they're helping you a lot more. And they mentioned that from the etiquette of visiting the sick is to put one's hand on the sick person's forehead and to inquire regarding the illness, as long as that does not cause that person any kind of undue inconvenience. It's sufficient to also ask in such situations, if you're not supposed to be in the room, if it's causing that person inconvenience or their family, just to check in with that person's family. Maybe they don't want anyone in the hospital room. Don't visit someone who doesn't want visitors. That's a very, very important rule for the sick. If they don't want visitors, they're oftentimes, like sometimes a mother will like deliver, right? She'll have, and random people will show up at the hospital and she's like, no, I'm not home yet. I don't want anyone dropping off food or soup or anything. Like, this is really not the time. And so there's situations like that. People who have surgeries will be really nauseous. Any sound, sometimes like certain surgeries will like set them off. So it's really important. He says it in the book. The visit is only done knowing that the sick wants the visit. So that you have to check in with the family to know that this is the right time. And then also that it's not going to harm them in any kind of way or inconvenience them in any kind of way. Then all of this reward comes. He says, beware, because if these things are not taken care of and you cause distress to someone who's already sick, you can actually incur sin. So see how like so much of it is intention, right? So much of love and service is like the subtleties of the intention. It's not just like the act in and of itself. There's beautiful du'as that we say for the sick. They're mentioned here. As'alullahu al-azim, Rabb al-arsh al-azim, an yashfik. This is from one of the prophetic du'as. I ask Allah, the tremendous Lord of the great throne, to cure you. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who says this, Allah will cure the sick person through this du'a, provided that that person's time of death had not come. That's narrated in Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi. We have 3 minutes left. I cannot start janazah and burial. So I covered 5 out of 10. What was that?
20.
I can do 20 deeds of Love and service. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so due to time, and forgive me, everybody, the ones that we were supposed to finish, but we didn't get to today was participation in funeral, janazah, salah, and burial. There's so much reward. I'll just say now that like each one of these parts has its own reward. So the one who's with the person who's passed away before the janazah takes place, there's a special reward in that. Before the janazah, like the one who went to their home as soon as they found like that. And again, assuming that the person wants them to be there, that there's a special reward. The one who goes to the janazah prayer, special reward. The one who goes to the burial, another special reward. And the person who comes afterwards to the condolences, they do a ta'ziyah, there's a special reward. So they're not like, it's not just all one thing. And there's beautiful narrations from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that show us how much there is in that. Consoling the bereaved. The bereaved is described not just as someone who lost someone, but anyone going through a tribulation and the one who consoles them. So now think about like chaplaincy. People who are chaplains and they hold space for people and hospitals are going through things. And one of the things that was really profound to me is the one who consoles someone who's going through a difficulty gets the reward of the one who's going through the difficulty. Have you ever heard a story that you're like, I could never go through that, right? That's such a difficult test, right? But you held space for them. And just even holding space was hard, right? Because it's such a difficult, whatever they went through was so hard. Imagine that just doing that, you get the reward of that tribulation they went through. Like, we should love and serve like that. We had nothing else better to do, right? like if you can get like, you don't have to go through it yourself. You just have to be there for someone else who is. To love and serve for the sake of Allah, he has love for the sake of Allah as its own chapter, helping a Muslim, interceding in permissible matters. So inshallah, maybe we'll get to those in detail next week. We'll close, inshallah, so that everyone can get to their respective iftars. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضى واجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم آمين يا رب العالمين اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. O God, give us success to attain what you love and are pleased with. Make us amongst your felicitous servants. Allow us to die on the statement of guidance. Teach us what will benefit us and give us the success to act upon what you have taught us. Make that in which we are engaged pure and devoted to your noble face. Ameen, O Lord of the worlds. O God, make this gathering of ours a gathering enveloped in mercy and our parting thereafter, a parting of our sins purged and forgiven, not one of us wretched or deprived. And peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and upon his noble family, companions, and followers. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.